Good morning, and thank you for joining us. I'm Brandon Brown, and I have the honor of serving as the CEO of the Mind Trust. We're an education nonprofit with a mission to ensure that every Indianapolis student has access to a high-quality education. And we work with our community toward a day when race and income are no longer predictors of life outcomes. Welcome to the event. So before we get started though, I'd like to thank our sponsors who've generously supported this event and the Mind Trust mission. Thank you to our production sponsor, Taft, and our panel sponsors, Kite Realty Group, Marian University, One America, and Barnes & Thornburg, and our other sponsors, the Indianapolis Recorder newspaper, and the Piles CPAs, and the Center for Innovative Education Solutions, and Beloved Community, and Faegre Drinker, and Gelzer. We'd also love for you to let us know you're here by introducing yourself in the chat. You can chat by scrolling just below where the video is shown, add your name and click save. Feel free to ask any questions you want. We will either try to follow up with you immediately or we'll try to follow up with you immediately after the event. We know the past 16 months have been hard for everyone, especially for communities of color and for low-income families in our city. The pandemic has also once again shown us that Indianapolis is a city where its people and institutions come together to tackle big challenges. And this is why we're so excited to share with you today what the pandemic was like for students, families, and educators across our city. At the Mind Trust, we were able to pour significant resources and support into helping our educators and families throughout the pandemic. None of that would have been possible without the support of our very generous donors. As we come together today, we know there's still much more work to be done on behalf of our city students. I ask each of you to consider making a donation to the Mind Trust. Your support will ensure that we continue to advocate for children and families and support our fantastic educators. I have great news for you today. An anonymous donor has very generously offered to match every donation made as a result of today's event up to $20,000. That means each dollar you donate today will be doubled. We're truly grateful to each of you for considering making a donation to support our mission. Throughout the pandemic, the Mind Trust prioritized listening to families and community organizations to more clearly understand what our children needed the most. One thing was clear. We continuously heard from families that they were facing a childcare crisis. Our families needed to work, but many of them didn't have childcare or supervision while their students engaged in virtual learning. In response, the Mind Trust launched free community learning sites. These sites were located at community and faith organizations all across Indianapolis, and they provided students with meals and a safe and supportive place to engage in virtual learning. This is just one way that we responded to our community's needs. Here's a little bit more about how the Mind Trust responded and what we've learned as a result. So at the Mind Trust, we've always wanted to make sure that we're doing everything we can to serve our community. So we really, set out to listen and to truly understand what those needs were. And then we just felt very convicted to make sure that we were shifting our approach to make sure that we were meeting the moment for our kids. So we know that COVID over the last 15 months has impacted everybody. But we also know that communities of color in our city have been impacted the greatest. But we also need to make sure that we're moving forward strategies that will support our communities that have been most impacted over the past year. So that's really been the driving force behind what we've tried to do here recently at the Mind Trust. We knew that really early on in the pandemic that food insecurity was going to be a major issue for many of our families. So we knew that by investing $100,000 in an organization like Gleaners, we would directly provide food to kids and families at a moment when they needed it the most. And I'm proud that the Mind Trust has partnered with so many organizations to step up and to make sure that we're doing everything we can to meet the needs of our children and families. Because what we know is that our society and our education system were not working for families of color prior to COVID. We know that many of those major disparities have only been exacerbated since COVID, and we can't go back to normal. We have to work with our community and work with our children and families to just reimagine a new future. So I'm excited for the Mind Trust to play one role in a comprehensive effort to reimagine what our education system looks like for our kids.
Wow, that video really captures how we've been able to help some of the most vulnerable children and families in our community. Good morning, everyone. And Brandon, thank you for your remarks. I'm Shannon Williams, and I serve as Senior Vice President of Community Engagement at the Mind Trust. While the impact of the pandemic looks and feels a lot different today than it did this time last year, it's important for us to remember how we felt then, the uncertainty, the fear, and even the feelings of loneliness. When we launched the community learning sites, parents and students felt all of those things, which is why it was critical for the Mind Trust to do something that would ease the worries, provide solutions, and give kids an outlet to, well, be kids and safely interact with one another. Launching the community learning sites was one of the most impactful ways that we supported the community during the pandemic. I had the great honor of visiting several sites to observe, but more importantly, to listen to the leaders of community organizations, the students attending the sites, and also parents. Everyone seemed to agree that the community learning sites were truly transformative. We heard so much positive feedback. One parent said his son's reading and math skills improved tremendously because of the individualized attention he received at the learning site. A grandmother shared that her granddaughter was back to normal because the usually outgoing and loquacious child became depressed because she was unable to spend time with her friends. And I'll never forget what a mother said to me during one of my visits. With tears in her eyes, she told me that the community learning site her young children attended actually enabled her to keep her job at a local hardware store. That mother doesn't have a support system in Indy, and she was on the brink of losing her job because her children were too young to stay home alone. The experiences I just shared with you and the impact our organization has been able to make in this community is because of amazing funders and donors who believe in our work and want better outcomes for children. We don't take that for granted. I'd like to show you a video featuring 4 amazing people. Ms. Kiana Warren, founding principal of Purdue Polytech High School North, Ms. Kim, a second grade teacher at Pilot Ed Schools, Delma Suber, a parent of a Heron High School student and a parent advocate for empowered families, and Maya Suber, a junior at Heron High School. You will also have the opportunity to hear more from each of them during a live panel discussion following the video. Please feel free to chat questions if you have any in the chat box.
It was definitely a process. It was a step-by-step, and not only for me, but for my students as well. Students tend to go out every single day. That's what they were used to doing. Hang out with their friends, having those experiences, and all of a sudden they lost it for almost a year. So coming back into the classroom, they had to relearn several rules and expectations. Our administrators were such a big part for this. I know they received a lot of help from the Mind Trust because in the moment when we needed that support and the moment when we needed that guidance, they were there, and they were not only there to tell us what to do, but they were also there to help throughout this whole process.
You know, it was really interesting because I'm both a school leader and a parent. And so learning from home alongside my kiddos was interesting, but it helped me empathize with what our parents had going on. We constantly had to shift and make changes to our practices. One of the really great things that came from this were the virtual learning labs that happened throughout the school year that the Mind Trust sponsored. They partnered with local organizations that as schools we know and trust, and that was really important. And even over the summer, they're combating learning loss through programming that allows the students of the city to have access to high quality instruction from highly certified teachers. So we're really excited that students in the city can benefit from that programming.
What Mind Trust and Empower Families did for communities especially during the pandemic, is offer a refuge for them in the community, especially with the learning sites. I had an opportunity to not only bring my children there, but also be a facilitator, to be able to help other families who could not necessarily afford to just leave their children at home or send them to a daycare. So Mind Trust was able to provide this hub for families to bring them to a safe environment and still receive education. So that in and of itself made history, because I talked to a lot of friends who their cities were nowhere near doing what we were doing. So we were actually doing something that was cutting edge.
I think there's a lot of things you take for granted, and then when you're in a situation that you don't have those things anymore, you tend to try to appreciate what's around you a little bit more, like the people and all the privileges you have. Because I realize, like for school and stuff like that, if I'm not present, I'm not going to be able to do my best. So I think what I'm going to take with me is just be more present with other people.
Throughout this whole experience, I felt like we were definitely supported and that our students actually love school and they love learning and they miss their teachers, because the moment they walk into the building, they were ready to learn and they told us how much they missed us.
It allowed us to revisit our practices and also to see what we might take with us after the pandemic, those lessons learned that will all lead to more student growth and development.
You are your strongest resource. Tap into the power that's within.
Wow, such a great video. The Mind Trust still has a lot of work to do, but we cannot do the necessary work for our families without your support. Please consider making a donation to the Mind Trust today. And remember, your donation will be doubled by the match. So far, we've been fortunate to raise $800 in donations, which doubles to $1,600 for our kids. Thank you so much to those who have already donated. I'm now excited to welcome Kiana Warren, Ms. Kim, Delma Suber, and Maya Suber to the event for our panel discussion. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's get started. The first question goes to Delma. And this question was submitted by Sarah Terrell. Sarah asked, as teachers, what do parents need from us to help your children reacclimate to the classroom? Delma?
Thank you. Thank you, Shannon, for that. That's a great question. I think what parents need from teachers is the vulnerability that they showed during this pandemic, the flexibility, the understanding, the compassion, and not just do it during a pandemic, but actually keep it all throughout the year. So the same compassion, love, flexibility that we were shown, continue that. And then as we saw, our children were still able to thrive during this experience. So keeping those same emotions throughout the school year.
Thanks, Delma. Vulnerability and flexibility are so important for children. Thank you for your response.
No problem.
Kiana, we had several questions about student mental health and trauma. As a school leader, how are you prioritizing this for the upcoming school year and preparing your teachers to respond?
It's a really great question because the pandemic hit students very differently. And also it really highlighted disparities for us. And what we're going to continue to do going into the fall is making sure we continue our strong social and emotional learning program. We have upped our counseling supports provided to our students and to our staff. One thing that we really value in our PPHS community is making sure that we provide really great services for both our staff and our students, because we say teachers cannot pour from an empty cup. We put a large focus on giving students a space to process out loud, because the term that we also think about is the fact that there were two pandemics that went on, not just the pandemic of COVID-19, but also racial injustices. So giving students really good space to talk through that and process their feelings. And all of that great stuff. And then just really having empathy at the forefront. And then another big piece is just making sure we're coming in with really high love and support and community and academic excellence. They go hand in hand. We both focus on the social emotional learning, the mental health, and the academic excellence.
Thanks, Kiana. You're absolutely right. There were two pandemics, and the fact that your school has focused on the social emotional aspect of a child's growth is so important. So thank you so much for the work that you do, and our city is tremendously grateful and fortunate to have you. Our next question is for Maya. Maya, you're a student. I'm glad you're on the panel to provide student perspective. So was it difficult for you to stay motivated during the pandemic?
I think that's an easy answer, and that's a yes, because if you're in your house every single day with not many people around, it's just you and the computer, I think it's really easy to not be motivated and be isolated. And there's also like a lot of distractions around you, like your phone, your TV, or just like doing something other than what you're supposed to do in class. So I think it's really easy to get caught up in other distractions and just everything else that's going on in the world to be not focused on school. Because I feel like that's the last thing on everybody's mind when we're in a pandemic.
Thank you for that. You certainly hit the nail on the head with that one. Gloria Salazar submitted our next question. Ms. Kim, what was your favorite memory of teaching virtually? I'm excited to hear your response because you have the adorable little second graders. So what was your favorite memory?
One of my favorite memories of teaching virtually was definitely come up with creative ways to reach our students and being able to create relationships within our homes, because we were all just through Zoom, and students were so excited to talk to us, and students were so excited to get to know us on a more personal level. And that was a really, really rich experience that we had. And students were actually very excited to connect with each other through Zoom. And I knew that several of them were going through a lot of stuff during the pandemic, and no matter what, we had those hours for ourselves, and they knew that those hours were meant to be given with a purpose, and we were there to learn. But not only that, but we were also there to get to know each other more, and they were also able to talk to their friends. And we even came up with several ideas for shows that we could do through Zoom, and they were so excited. One of them even told me, Miss Kim, do you have a YouTube channel? Because I want to subscribe. And so it was really interesting to see all of that, and it was really nice to be a part of that as well.
That's amazing. I'm sure you would have a lot of subscribers on your YouTube channel. Maya, kind of along those same lines, I would love to know, what was the most exciting part about being back in school in person for you?
Once again, I mean, as a person who considers myself more introverted, I was really excited to actually see people around me and actually participate and be more, I guess, I can actually listen more in class, since I'm like forced in an environment that I have to listen. I don't have other choice. So I think that was really exciting for me, because I think my grades went up when I got back to school because I was in class every day and I had like a set routine just for me. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's great. Delma, you are a parent advocate for Empowered Families, and that's a local organization that works with parents so that they can advocate for the changes they believe are necessary in education here locally. So I'm really interested in hearing from you what you've heard as you've talked to parents throughout the city, what you've heard from other Black and Brown parents, and how they would like to approach educating their children moving forward beyond the pandemic.
Thank you, Shannon. What I've heard from a lot of parents as a parent advocate is that they want equitable education. As we saw during the pandemic, that our school systems were able to help those students who didn't have internet, or those students who didn't have access to a computer. So we saw that our school systems was willing to be flexible and meet each family where they are. So basically, that's what the families are saying, meet them where they are. A lot of our parents didn't have no idea about e-learning or even really how to access a computer. So having someone to train them on to be able to utilize a e-learning or utilize a computer or understand platforms. This is what they're wanting, is to have those life skills to be able to be confident enough to be able to assist their children.
Yeah, those life skills are really important. Can you talk a little bit about some of the things that stress the parents out? I think that's really important to highlight. And as organizations in the city work to provide some of those life skills, but also meet the needs of the parents, as you mentioned, what were some of the stressors that impacted parents that indirectly impacted students and their academic success?
Yeah, a lot of the stressors that I was hearing from parents is that not being able to have a safe place to send their children because they still had to work. The bills still had to be paid. Food still needed to be provided. So a lot of the stressors, thank God Indianapolis had pulled together to be able to provide these pantries for some of these families so that they still could be able to put food on their table. And also with the learning hubs, being able to take your child somewhere for free and them being able to still receive the education that you feel that they deserve. Like I said, a lot of the parents didn't feel adequate enough to be able to provide in that support system to be able to assist their children during e-learning. So being able to take them somewhere where someone was able to kind of be able to help their children stay on task and be able to meet their assignment needs. Those are some of the stressors that Indianapolis was able to meet for our parents. And, job skills. A lot of our parents had lost their jobs. So being able to have someone to kind of help them and coach them through to be able to still navigate and get the job skills that they need. So those were just some of the stressors that I was hearing from parents.
Yeah, thanks for that. Kiana, so Delma explained some of the stressors that parents felt and are still feeling. The pandemic isn't over yet, although we've come a long way since the beginning of the pandemic. So as school approaches and as, students begin to reacclimate back into the hopefully regular routines of school, it will still be really important for parents to be involved in their child's academic life. So can you kind of give us some examples of creative ways to keep and maintain parent involvement beyond the pandemic, but also considering what Delma just said and the stressors that they have and that they have to deal with on a regular basis? What are some creative things that parents can do to be involved in their children's lives?
So even prior to the pandemic, our school has always made an emphasis on building a partnership with families and including family voice and choice at the forefront. It was parent voice was really included as we were founding our school and as we continue the work that we do every day. One of the examples that was a quick win for us is we noticed that a lot of families enjoyed connecting with our staff and with having parent meetings virtually. So in the future, we'll continue to have a virtual option as well as an in-person option so that we can meet the unique schedules that families have. And another thing we found was there's some aspects of virtual learning that students actually did better with than in-person learning. So we're really going to drill down on our practices and see which students had a lot of success in virtual learning. And we're going to find out what made that go really well for them, or we're going to continue those practices. But at the forefront, always just having a student-centered approach and listening to our parents and taking time to talk and hear what they need from us, because schools existed to serve the community and not the other way around.
Thanks for that. I think the student-centered approach is so important. And to be honest, I think that's why we've been so successful in our efforts to collaborate with the community and provide initiatives like the community learning site. So thank you for the work that you do, Kiana. Ms. Kim, what did you learn during the pandemic as an educator while virtually teaching that you will continue and bring into the next school year?
Well, something that I've learned throughout this whole virtual experience is definitely flexibility and being able to provide grace for our families. And not only that, but create different ways to engage students. I believe that virtual platforms are right now very attractive to students. So being able to provide that still, even when we come back in person, it will create student engagement and also a way for parents to track their growth and being able to also track all the work. And family communication is key for the student success. So being able to work with families hand in hand, even after, everything that will happen later, it's essential for the students, and it's essential for us to work as a community as well.
Great. I think it's important. The pandemic has impacted all of us in different ways, and it's been stressful on so many different levels. I'm really interested to know how each of you kind of provided self-care for yourself. How did you take care of yourself during this very hectic time? Especially, Maya, you're young. I think sometimes we assume that youth just, don't have any problems or any cares, but we know that that's not true. So how did you take care of yourself and provide, reflection time and mental health time so that you could be the best you? And then I'd also like to hear from Kiana because, you're a parent, you're a school leader, you've got a lot on your plate. Go ahead, Maya.
I think feeling a sense of normalcy, if that's a word, I don't know. Just like, if something is like, I think just things I love to do. So personally, I love to watch films and I like to analyze them. So that's something I did. And I think like finding something that I love to do within such a hectic and just very complicated, complex situation, and just hanging out with, little moments with my family, stuff like that. Just doing what I can to connect with people and doing what I love. I think that's one thing that was a huge self-care for me that really helped me.
Great, thank you for that. Kiana, quick 30-second response.
Family time and doing Zoom game nights was so much fun and really supported my self-care.
Awesome. That's amazing. Thank you, ladies, so much. Unfortunately, we don't have time for more questions. However, if you ask questions in the chat and we were not able to get to the questions, don't worry. Our team will respond and answer your questions. So expect a follow-up from our team. Again, thank you to each of the panelists for participating. You had really phenomenal responses and perspectives, and we appreciate you. It's so admirable what each of you do. I will now turn things over to Brandon to close us out.
Thank you so much, Shannon. I am going to incorporate Zoom family game nights into my family routine moving forward. That's a great idea, Kiana. I just want to thank all of you for your incredible contributions during that very engaging conversation. And I really think that the message that you all shared today makes me think about how critical it is that we continue to evaluate what we learned from the pandemic and what we can implement moving forward to do right by our students and our community. And with that being said, to ensure that we're able to continue our work at a high level, we do ask for your support. I'm excited to share that we've now raised $1,400 with the match. That's actually $2,800. Thank you so much to everybody who has already contributed. If you have not yet made a donation, please consider supporting the Mind Trust. And remember, what you give today will be twice as much. Moving forward, the Mind Trust will remain committed to working toward a day where all children in our city have access to a great school. We'll continue to launch and support transformative schools that have the key conditions for success. We'll work to ensure that those most impacted by educational inequity are leading the way and making the necessary changes to improve our education system. And we'll partner with a wide array of organizations to realize our vision for great schools for all. And we'll do all of this with a laser focus on racial equity so that race no longer predicts student outcomes. Thank you so much for your support of the Mind Trust. Please know that we'll continue to respond to the needs of our families and do what is right for all children in our city, regardless of circumstance. Thank you, and I hope you have a great day.